Good afternoon to you. 306 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news coming up. From Breitbart News, Alex Marlow, the editor-in-chief, joins us this hour at 3:30. We talk, of course, the news of the day. Biden, and as Obama tries to force him out, Rick Grinnell is here at 4 o'clock, former ambassador to Germany, former acting director of national intelligence. We're going to get him to weigh in on not just all of the drama around Joe Biden, but also this big NATO meeting this week right here in Washington. And Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary Ben Carson, is here with us at 5 o'clock. Boy, we have a lot of great guests and a lot of good conversation ahead, including with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for the big boy press conference?
Big boy press conference. Big boy press conference. A big boy press conference. Hold a press conference. A big boy press conference.
Press conference. I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it. The press conference. The big boy press conference. I think y'all are planning to have.
Gives his press conference. His big boy press conference.
That's right. The big boy press conference coming up today. It's going to be at 6:30. They've been pushing it around in the schedule. It was originally scheduled for 5:30. My goal was to air some of it with you, and then we could laugh together as we listened along. But this is not going to be the case. It'll be airing at 6:30 now, but no telling that Biden will actually show up on time. No telling that they won't move it again. There's a lot of moving parts here to try and make Joe Biden appear like he's alive on screen for some length of time, especially with a suddenly hostile press who exists to try and maintain power for the Democratic Party, and that involves getting rid of Joe. They have to replace the quarterback because they don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. They've got to get rid of this guy, and quickly. So there's a big effort underway to do that. Now, if Biden performs even at just the lowest possible levels, if he just stays awake for it, if he can stand there, if he can take all of the questions, and he can walk off that stage tonight, maybe he will get a speech like this from Dr. Jill.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the...
Yeah, the big boy press conference. Yeah, you're a big boy. You're a big boy. You did the press. How embarrassing is this? How embarrassing is this? Yeah, they're trying to get rid of him. Right now, Obama world is trying to do it, and I sent a message to Dan Bongino earlier during his program because I heard him talking about this idea that we need to save Joe for our own tactical benefit, and this is an idea I've been discussing as well. Remember, I've told you about the Leave Biden Alone pack that I wanted to launch some time ago, and the goal here we share is keep the worst possible choice on the ballot to increase the odds that people vote for Trump. That's really it. Or decide that I don't want to vote anyway. I don't like Biden. I'm going to stay home. All right, fine. Then Trump can win this thing and we can get back to the order of business, which is taking care of this country. But it is, in my view, it's you're familiar with the Laffer curve, right? You're familiar with the economic model of the Laffer curve. It's made famous by a conservative economist called Art Laffer. And it's a basic premise, right? And he kind of infamously, the claim is that he drew it on a napkin to try and show the person he was sitting with what his idea was. And it was about taxation. And he drew a very basic graph with a bell curve on it. Just a curve that goes up and a curve that goes down. And here's what it tells you. At the very beginning, at the 0 point on the XY axis, is taxes and revenues. So if you tax everyone at 0%, you get no revenue. The government gets no revenue by taxing at 0%. If you tax everybody at 100%, you also get no revenue. Why is that? Because nobody's going to be productive in an environment where taxes are 100%. If you don't get to keep a single dollar that you generate for yourself, why would you do that? So you wouldn't. So 0% revenue at the 100 point, 0% revenue at the 0 point. So that means somewhere in between, it's not 50, I promise you that. Somewhere in between, there's an optimal spot to have taxes. Tax rates are set at a perfect spot where it doesn't discourage productivity and it generates massive government revenues. That's the sweet spot. That's where you want to be. And with Biden, that's where we want to be. The Laffer curve of Biden chaos. You want just enough chaos that everybody's like, God, this guy's a horrible president. But not so much chaos that the left is like, okay, let's get rid of him. Trebuchet his tail out of the White House. Let's quickly replace him and come up with something else. Oh, no. You can live with the mess you created, right? It's like when your dog craps on the floor. Come over here. Put your face in that. You know, look what you did. And so that's what we want to do with Democrats. We want to put their face in it, put their nose right in the mess that they've made and say, you're living with this. This is the mess you created. And it is indeed the mess that they've created. But the effort is continuing to unseat Biden. And thankfully, Dr. Jill and Hunter are holding on for dear life. They've decided they're in this to win this. Of course, they won't win it, but they're in it anyway. And here's what we're finding out today. Obama did know about the George Clooney op-ed yesterday. Remember, I came on the air yesterday and I said, there's no way this happens without Obama. Well, guess what we've confirmed today? Obama absolutely knew. In fact, Obama spoke to George Clooney ahead of this, according to Politico today. The Hollywood A-lister had called Obama in advance to warn him he was going to make the call in an op-ed published in the New York Times on Wednesday. Sources told Politico. Let me throw a flag on this, a caution flag at the very least. I don't believe that. I don't believe that it went in that order. I believe that that at the very least, Obama and Clooney were having a very robust conversation about what they could do to unseat Biden. It wasn't just Clooney picks up the phone and goes, hey, Mr. President, I'm going to write this op-ed. You don't know anything about it yet. I'm telling you for the first time. I'm writing this op-ed. I'm going to call for Biden to get out of the race. All right, do whatever you're going to do. That's fine. Whatever. I don't think so. I don't think it flows like that. The ex-president, according to Politico, did not encourage Clooney to make the remarks, but didn't try to stop him. Didn't try to stop him either, the sources claimed. This is, I still don't think this is the truth. But even not trying to stop George Clooney consists of a vote to get rid of Biden. That's what Obama's up to. And all of the people around Obama are up to this. We were playing audio for you of all of his former speechwriters out in the press yesterday saying that Biden needs to go. David Axelrod, who's one of his chief strategists, the chief Obama strategist throughout so much of his political career, going back to Chicago. This guy saying Biden needs to go over and over and over again. And to add to the evidence here, Biden world is now convinced that Obama has called the hit in. Here's Joe Scarborough this morning on Morning Joe. This is, of course, Biden's favorite television show. This is the one he watches. These are the people he talks to. He feels like he's part of the cast.
Let's say one thing that we do have to underline here, just so viewers can follow what's going on behind the scenes, is the Biden campaign and many Democratic officials do believe that Barack Obama is quietly working behind the scenes to orchestrate this.
He's working behind the scenes to orchestrate this, says Joe Scarborough, who is about as close as anybody in the American media are to Biden. So there you go. That's the read this morning on Biden's favorite morning show. Now, Biden's favorite morning show earlier this week, it's interesting. This is where all the interesting stuff happens. Remember how when President Trump was in office, he would watch Fox and Friends a lot, and so you'd get lots of different like conservative lawmakers and influencers, people who would want to bend the ear of President Trump but not have access to him. They'd go on Fox and they'd make their case. They'd be on Fox and Friends and they would say something. I think we should do this. And then you might see a tweet from President Trump not long after. That's kind of a good idea. So that was a way to communicate. So here, the left, their version of this is far lower IQ and so desperate. All these people are going on Morning Joe to make their cases to Biden. Please get out of the race. And that's what Nancy Pelosi did yesterday. So something I left out of the assessment yesterday, why Pelosi goes on Morning Joe and says, I want the president to make, a decision? She wants him to make a decision about whether or not he stays in the race. Biden, of course, having announced at the beginning of the week, I'm staying in this thing. She pretends like he never made that announcement and says, well, it's still an open question.
Does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision.
Okay, so now we have an update on why Nancy Pelosi did that, more specifically. Politico reports today that Nancy Pelosi has been, quote, engaged in some more active maneuverings. She carefully ironed out what she wanted to say Wednesday on Morning Joe, Biden's appointment viewing, keeping Democratic leaders abreast of her intentions before she suggested on the program that Biden should quickly make a decision about whether he will step down. Those comments were meant to serve as a subtle green light. Subtle. It's as subtle as a stop sign hitting your car in a hurricane. It's a subtle green light she orchestrated. One person close with Pelosi said, meant to encourage members to speak up about their desire to see change atop the ticket and to warn Biden to reconsider staying in the race. Furthermore, in private conversations with lawmakers, the former speaker has been forthright about the dire situation the party now finds itself in. She suggested to people that Biden won't win this November and should step aside, according to a half dozen lawmakers and others who have either spoken with her or are familiar with conversations she has had. So here's another piece. Nancy Pelosi once again lying in public and telling the truth behind closed doors. She's telling Democrats, the ones she respects, the lawmakers who share power with her, Joe has to go. Joe has to go. Meanwhile, she gets on television and she pretends that he still has a decision to make. Even though he already has made his decision, even though Jill has already made his decision that he's staying in the race. That leads us to a survey today that Biden World apparently is doing. New York Times reports that the embattled Biden campaign tests Kamala Harris's strength versus Trump. Really? What does that mean? They're thinking about replacing Joe? Is that what's happening? Under siege from fellow Democrats, President Biden's campaign is quietly testing the strength of Vice President Kamala Harris against former President Trump in a head-to-head survey of voters as Mr. Biden fights for his political future with a high-stakes news conference on Thursday. The survey, which is being conducted this week and was commissioned by the Biden campaign's analytics team, is believed to be the first time since the debate that Mr. Biden's aides have sought to measure how the vice president would fare at the top of the ticket. It was described by 3 people who were informed about it and insisted on anonymity because of the sensitive nature of the information. They didn't specify why the survey was being conducted or what the campaign planned to do with the results. It could be read as the team gathering information to present a case to the president that his path forward is slim, or to argue that Mr. Biden is still the strongest standard bearer for his party. And that's where I think this is really going. So the Biden people, to the extent that they're conducting a survey, we're going to see if Kamala Harris is strong. This is all just a way to say, no, Joe Biden is still the, quote, strongest candidate. He's the strongest candidate to defeat Trump, not to do something good for the country, to defeat Trump. That's the pitch they keep giving us. In fact, it looks like Kamala is a dud. According to CBS's Ed O'Keefe in the last hour or so, he says that in a memo that's now circulating among Biden's staff and to be shared with Democrat senators later today, they say based on ongoing polling, I would assume this is the very poll that the New York Times was just referencing. If it's ongoing polling, it means the data that they're gathering as we speak. They say, quote, there is no indication that anyone else would outperform the president versus Trump. Hypothetical polling of alternative nominees will always be unreliable, and surveys do not take into account the negative media environment that any Democrat nominee will encounter. The only Democrat candidate for whom this is already baked in is President Biden. So there you go. So now the campaign is telling themselves and telling Democrats, guys, the only person who has any assessment whatsoever been done of him by the American people, by the American news media, that's Biden. So all these other suckers, if they jump in, first of all, they're not polling all that well in our matchups, in our surveys. And second, the right hasn't had a chance to attack them yet. They're going to be even further down in the polls. Now, can they get lower than Biden? I don't know. Joe Biden's approval rating as of today, 538 reports, is at its all-time low. Once again, for the 10,000th time on this program, new low Joe. That approval rating, now just 36.8%. Root canals poll higher. And you got to love the Democrats who pretend like they just discovered all of this. You know. What? Biden? Senile? No one told me.
Jessica, we spoke with dozens of Democratic strategists, aides, officials across the Biden administration and across the party at large. And there was one consistent theme, and that was widespread anger and sadness at seeing the president's decline on full display on the debate stage 2 weeks ago after what they chalk up to careful choreography among the president's closest advisors to shield him from public view over the last year or potentially before that. Now, Democrats here in the U.S. tell CNN that when they tried to raise concerns about Biden's age, they were dismissed or worse. And overseas officials tell us that when Biden attended events on the world stage, he appeared exhausted, sometimes needing scheduled downtime.
I do love that they're pretending they just found all of this out. Chris is in Thurmont now, line 3. Chris, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
How you doing, Vince?
Good.
I'm kind of embarrassed as an American that at the end of this NATO summit, they're calling it a big boy press conference. I mean, aren't the adults supposed to be in the room?
Yeah.
You know.
The big boy, that's what you would say if you were mocking. If you were mocking your political opponent, look at you and your big boy press conference. It's literally his own people who are calling it that, Chris.
And it sounds more like something Trump would say than they would say.
I know, exactly. Trump's like, look at him, his big boy press conference. Yeah, that's right. I always call, Coringe's press briefing the kids briefing, and Kirby does the adult briefing. And now Biden's doing the big boy press conference. He'll have Jill there to clap for him at the end. Way to go. Way to go, Joe. That's coming up later today. Boy, that's going to be wild. Hey, coming up in a moment, Alex Marlow, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. We'll talk to him about Obama's efforts to take out Joe. Hey, good afternoon. 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Rick Grinnell is with us at 4 o'clock. Or should I say Ambassador Rick Grinnell? Or should I say former acting director of national intelligence Grinnell? Well, either way, he'll be here. And then Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary Ben Carson. He's got a lot of titles, too. He's here at 5 o'clock, and you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, it's official. Obama called in the hit.
I'll say one thing that we do have to underline here, just so viewers can follow what's going on behind the scenes, is the Biden campaign and many Democratic officials do believe that Barack Obama is quietly working behind the scenes to orchestrate this.
Sure is. That mission to fundamentally transform America continues. Joining us now, Alex Marlow, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and the author of Breaking Biden. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Vince, it's great to be back on the show with you. Thanks for having me.
This is the kind of story that I would normally just read on Breitbart. Oh, look, Obama is taking down Biden. But now it seems the whole media is in on it. They want to tell you all about Obama's role in taking down Joe. Alex, what changed?
Yeah, it's very odd. I think there's a lot of people who are doing what is known as a CYA measure. It's people who want to point the finger at Joe and say this is not about us, it's not about the media establishment, the corporate establishment, the Democrat establishment failing. It's just this one guy, and they know that if Barack Obama really did weigh in and push his weight around, it'd be very hard for Joe to continue. But Obama hasn't really done that. I mean, they're kind of acting like George Clooney speaks for Obama, which is, if that's the case, I mean, what a big joke that is. I mean, they just had a huge fundraiser for him 3 weeks ago. Everyone acted like the fundraiser was perfect. Joe's got his fastball back. He's incredible. And now all of a sudden Obama is calling for Biden to leave via George Clooney, and we're all supposed to be thinking, oh, wow, this is huge. This is a big deal.
So,
and maybe it is. Maybe it is, Vince. But how are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to start trusting the media today?
No, that's true. I don't trust the press here, but I do trust my instincts, and that what they tell me is that there are lots of Obama people who are simultaneously all trying to unseat Biden. And this is in some ways kind of par for the course for Obama in terms of someone else doing his dirty deeds. He's a passive-aggressive guy. So the idea that he would call upon George Clooney to do the hit, it strikes me as plausible.
It very, very much fits. It fits the Obama personality. It's also a weaker move than the sort of the mythos around Obama would dictate. It might fit with reality, but it's interesting how the media builds him up as this unstoppable force of nature, and then he could really be doing this passive-aggressive thing.
Yes.
So then the question is why? Why is he doing it? And it might be because he's not really inner circle with Joe Biden. Inner circle with Joe Biden's a very small group of people. It's those family members, Valerie, Jill, Hunter, and about 4 top advisors. We're talking Donnellan, we're talking Kaufman, we're talking Jeff Zients, and we're talking Ron Klain. Those are really the 7 names that I always think of as inner circle. And if none of those people are coming out there, Ron Klain came out today and said he's in it to win it. If none of those names are breaking, maybe Obama felt like he had to hedge.
Yeah. Also, it's pretty clear from the body language. You can see when these two guys are together, Obama has nothing but contempt for Joe Biden. It's very patronizing, his attitudes towards Joe, including when he kind of infamously went and visited the White House and he was like the biggest star in the room. Joe Biden, the literal president of the United States, was begging just to get Obama to look back at him and to do something with him. And meanwhile, on that stage just a few weeks ago, the one where we were told, oh, no, Joe Biden's perfectly healthy, the media insisted after we all saw him staring into space for nearly a minute. On that stage, Obama was like, you're leaving. He grabs Joe Biden by the elbow and drags him off. It's crystal clear to me he doesn't think highly of the guy.
Yeah, that's a great callback. And then you start looking at some of the history and you think about the way that Joe Biden talked about Obama prior to 2008. If you think about how Obama world is clearly fond of Kamala Harris, and Obama has basically moved into the Hollywood phase of his life. Hollywood loves Kamala Harris. And then all of a sudden you start doing the math, start thinking this does add up. The one question mark is why isn't he doing it himself? Because he probably could deliver a kill shot. Or is he afraid he can't? And that's the intrigue that just makes me so excited.
Well, I think so Obama does prioritize Democrat victories. He thinks that's important. But there's nothing he prioritizes more than his own ego. So there's a lot here. One, if Obama were to come out publicly and say, it's time for Joe to go, we need somebody better, we're going to put that person in, and then that person loses, then Obama's going to have to wear the consequences of that with his own party, and he doesn't want to. He likes this kind of distance where he can have other people do the dirty work, and he doesn't have to live with the fingerprints in any way. And I just think that he kind of wants to be all things for all people in his own party. So the people who want to get rid of Joe, they kind of think Obama's on their side. The guys who want to keep Joe there to the extent that that coalition exists, well, Obama's not calling for him to go, so he must be with Joe. They were president and vice president together. They're boys. They call each other Joe and Barack. I think that this is once again, as we saw throughout Obama's time in politics, all about him and no one else.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing throughout all the various factions. And when you start trying to parse who's with Joe and who's against Joe, it really does feel like you could almost to a number. Everyone who's weighing in has an ulterior motive that fits with which side they're on. It's the people who have benefited greatly from Joe Biden's policies. Those are all with him. It's people who feel like that they're in a swing district and they think that any affiliation with Joe could cost them some votes. They're all against him. It almost is to a number, but I can't think of one person who is straying from that. And I think your point about Obama made me think about how he has an undefeated record. So if he comes out here and endorses and goes big, and then he loses. I mean, the guy is he's run every race. He's won every race he's ever ran in. And if he stands up and says, "I'm doing it. I'm making a move," and it doesn't work, what does that do to his legacy? You know he's thinking about that right now.
Sure thing. And look, you've covered it through all those years at Breitbart News, the Obama presidency. Who was he politically good for? What candidate in his party was he good for? And the answer to that question is just Obama. That's it.
Yeah,
Obama always oversaw losses among Democrats. Democrats do not do well with Obama. It wasn't about them. To the extent that he had some coattails, that definitely helped, but it was always about him and nobody else.
Yeah, and he did worse his second re-election, or he did worse his re-election run. Where, I mean, historically speaking, I don't like both guys in particular, but it's John McCain was a stronger candidate than Mitt Romney, if you really think about it, and Romney did better. Why is that? Because people are kind of going, maybe Obama isn't quite as magical as you would have thought. And then, of course, he could not pass the torch, which is a huge part of this narrative, is Biden is no one to pass the torch to. If Biden did, he would have stood aside a long time ago. But instead, he specifically put a dummy, Kamala Harris, in underneath him so that specifically she could not surpass him. And that's the dilemma that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it. How much do you think Kamala Harris, or at least the people around her, to the extent that she has any loyalists, are doing the leaking that we're now seeing? We're seeing a lot of information come out from the White House, including today, this report that Biden hasn't had, according to CNN, Biden hasn't had a cabinet meeting in over 9 months. He doesn't even meet with the cabinet. That's how much they're trying to insulate him from anybody finding out that he's senile, which is crazy to me because we all knew.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly right. I'm glad that you're smiling when you say that because I've been saying the same thing. It's like everyone's acting like it's a big cover-up. Yeah, of course it's a big cover-up because they never give us any details about his medical history, and they lie to our face. He lies about his toilet bowl teeth. He lies about his hair plugs. He lies about his plastic surgery. Of course he's lying about the big stuff. Yes. If he's lying about all little, that's why Trump is harping on the golf game. If he's lying about his golf handicap, then we know he's just lying all the time. So, but it is noteworthy that he still has been insulated, even though I thought we were all in on this joke, that he's basically deteriorating and he just taps people to serve specific roles and they do their job, and some people are going to vote for him anyway, despite that. And then now they're all acting like, oh, no, this was all a big shock. It's the not. Leaking, of course, has to be coming from Kamala Harris loyalists because that is the person who they have to go with. I mean, there's almost no math for anyone else other than Kamala to be the president. So, and this could be the opportunity for her. And there's no Kamala momentum. There's no energy for her. Isn't this the most unbelievable elephant in the room? That if people believed in Kamala Harris, Joe would have been forced out. It is the fact that no one is that confident she would win the race or would be a good president. And that's why everyone is doing this mealy mouth. Maybe he should stay. Maybe he should go. He should do what he wants. I guess he should go. If they believed in her, this would be much more emphatic.
I want to remind people, I'm going to play two pieces of audio real fast. This is September of 2019. This is a Democrat debate. And even back then, and it was certainly well before that, but even back then, Democrats, at least for the moment, were openly talking about Joe Biden's senility. Here's Julian Castro standing on a debate stage, Democrat primary, 2019.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Are you
forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago? I mean, I can't believe that you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
And then later that night on CNN, Senator Cory Booker, he jumped into the dog pile.
Look, I think that we are at a tough point right now because there's a lot of people who are concerned about Joe Biden's ability to carry the ball all the way across the end line without fumbling. And I think that Castro has some really legitimate concerns about can he be someone in a long, grueling campaign that can get the ball over the line? And he has every right to call that out.
And yet, Alex Marlow, we're being told at this moment that Democrats are shocked to discover that Joe Biden is senile.
I know. It's such a fake. And one of the big tells, and I think this is noteworthy with the Clooney news cycle, is that aforementioned fundraiser in Hollywood where they all acted like he was back. And then one of the Obama podcast bros came out and said everyone knew he wasn't back.
Yeah.
So then why was everyone sitting on it for 4 weeks? It's because they're all self-serving. They all have their own interests at heart. And now they see the sinking ship and all the rats are fleeing the sinking ship. That was great audio to pull that up, by the way. It was Vince, you know my stuff. I've been the guy who's been going around telling the right, please focus on his incompetence and his corruption. Don't focus on the age stuff. Everyone's made their peace with that. Even I'm out here saying that now something has changed. Now something has changed with this guy because everyone is all of a sudden throwing down. Now, why are they doing that? To cover their own behinds.
Right, and I think it's as simple as this. It's polling. They see the writing on the wall. And damage is en route, and so they need to trade their quarterback at this late stage in the season with the hopes of even scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl. That's what they want. It's very simply a polling assessment because Alex Marlow, if Biden was polling ahead of Trump right now, let's say by 2 points,
Yeah.
And he was exactly the way he is on that debate stage, exactly the way he is when he does the Stephanopoulos interview, exactly the way he is when he claims he's a black woman to the radio host. He got fired in Philadelphia. If he's like that and he's 2 points ahead, are these guys calling for him to step down?
No, I don't think so. And I think that another thing, the flip side of this point, is I think if Kamala Harris was trending 2 points ahead and Joe Biden 6 or 8 points down, whatever the average is now, then there would be even louder calls for him to step down. But the problem is, and this is the big fear of the Democrats, is she'll do even worse against Trump than he would. So they're in such a pickle, and I've never seen them so lost. Vince, you've been doing this about as long as I have, as if my recollection serves.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen the Democrats look this lost before in your life?
No, and here's the thing that I keep telling our audience and certainly all the conservatives I talk to. There's often this theory, the left does this too about Trump, for instance, but it's like everything gets so inverted. But we often give the left more credit for being cunning than they actually are. Like that there's a grand conspiracy, that every little thing that occurs is all part of some master plan to move us in some direction. And clearly the left has awful ideas for the country. They're overtaken by all sorts of Marxism that has really destroyed our country and brought us down an awful path. Having said that, they're also, I'm happy to report, very incompetent at executing so many of their missions. And the reason you're seeing Nancy Pelosi on television pretending to be subtle, well, Biden has to make a decision, when Biden literally said at the beginning of the week, I'm staying in this race. They don't want to be here. They didn't plan that out ahead of time. Yeah. They are in utter chaos right now, Alex Marlow, and it couldn't happen to a better group of people.
Yeah, amen to that. And this is where I always start from the approach. Let's assume they've got a master plan. Let's assume everything's all worked out. But then you got to look at the details. And I brought up that group of people. It's 3 people if you include the family, maybe an additional 4 if you're looking at inner circle. If those people do not break and Joe Biden has the delegates and he continues to raise funds and there's a few outlier polls he can cite to suggest that he's not doing that bad, he's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. They don't have the mechanisms to remove him. And everyone is acting like there's a grander conspiracy in that. There's no grander conspiracy. They have to convince him it's not worth it for him to go or present an option that is so obvious he has to go through with it. They're not doing that.
Okay, but let me ask you one last thing, because again, you've seen all of this. You saw it with Trump for sure. What if they move from the begging phase to the coercion phase? And what I mean by that is, right now they're pleading with Biden to get out, and he's not listening, or at least Jill isn't listening, or whoever makes the decision.
Great question.
But with Trump, look what they did. They manufactured an entire deep state initiative to try and both stop him from becoming president in the first place, to paralyze his presidency when he was in, and to prevent him from being reelected in 2020. The left has weapons that they haven't fully employed against Biden. What happens then?
Yeah, you're right about this. They definitely have cards they haven't played, and I think it's because I don't think their hand necessarily gets stronger if they play them, and I think that's a really big thing here that, again, is not getting enough attention. But I do think that, of course, there is a coercion element, but what are you going to offer him? What are you going to offer the family? There's nothing you can offer Frank Biden or James Biden. These guys are going around selling the Biden name to get money. There's nothing you could offer Hunter Biden, because Joe's got to pardon him, and if Joe pardons him before Election Day, it's going to hurt the whole party. So that's not a good one. Joe's so old, all he could possibly care about is legacy and who's going to take over from him ideologically. There's no one. So I think they should try that if I were them.
Yeah.
But what are they going to offer that family? I have no idea.
I think it's cash. Honestly, what you just described, I think that actually is probably where we end up. I think it's pardons in cash by the end of this. Because and do they have billionaires, donors in their own party who'd be willing to come up with a ton of money right now to buy Biden out of the presidency? The answer to that, I think, is yes.
You know, Lorene Powell Jobs, is the Steve Jobs' widow, who's one of the big power brokers in the Democrat Party, who I've been semi-obsessed with for the last 4 or 5 years. Her dream has been Kamala Harris as president, and she's got an infinite Rolodex. I mean, she'll never stop making money. All of her money's in Apple and Disney stock. It's someone should get her on the phone and get her on with Joe and say, Joe, what do you want? And that's it. There's your move right there. Boom.
Yeah.
I just solved Democrats' problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time either. Back in 2016, there were billionaires trying to buy Trump out of even running. they're going to do it again this time. Thank you very much. Alex Marlow, good to talk to you, sir.
Vince, you're so sharp. Thank you, man.
All right. There really is no telling what the left will do in its pursuit of power, if we've learned anything at all. Ryan's calling in from Woodbridge, now line 2. Ryan, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, just following up on what you were talking about with money or bribes. I think whether or not that he wins or loses, the left is setting up, they're setting up tools to use via the Clintons, let's see, Huma is marrying into the Soros family.
Yes, she just did.
And we already have Chelsea Clinton married to Mark Mazvinsky, who is like a partner at TPG. So that helps with money management and all of this, this crazy amounts of money thrown at the Republicans. I think they're setting things up for the future. Not only that, I think there's a lot of people that believe that Obama's pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Yes.
And he has two daughters that literally could be married into strategic power places, kind of like the Lannisters, if you ask me.
No, from Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Game of Thrones. I mean, strategically placing and marrying people up for power and advancement.
All I'm saying is the effort that they're willing to undertake. I don't think we can place restraints on it, on what that might be. And certainly offering at this moment carrot rather than stick could be the way they're approaching this. And you're right. There's no shortage of people that they're either married to or very close to who could come up with this money. Look what George Clooney and company did just a few weeks ago. They came up with a quick $30 million for a busted old jalopy. It's like, what? You raised $30 million for that guy? They did that at the drop of a hat, and now they're abandoning it.
Yeah, and that was record time. There is no low that these guys can go that's going to stop them, as long as they have money on their side, and then they allow basically anybody to do anything without any consequences because they own the justice system. We're in trouble.
Yeah, that's why there have to be consequences for this. And the first step is the voters should deliver those consequences in November. It's a wild story. Thank you, Ryan. Coming up, former ambassador to Germany, former acting director of national intelligence, Rick Grenell joins us. I have a lot to ask him about, from this NATO summit to what the deep state is willing to do to get rid of Joe.